very recently, our US partners, Audubon and American Bird Conservancy, helped publish the State of the US Birds Report 2025. And that reminded us that we have lost 3 billion birds, individual birds, since 1970, which was when I was born. So there's 3 billion fewer birds today than there were 54 years ago. So how can we activate more people to be interested in nature? So I think quite simply about this, in that my view is that if people have contact with nature, and if they have greater awareness of the beauty and the wonder of nature, or the importance of nature to their lives, then they're more likely to care about nature. And if they care, then they're more likely to act. So it is that pathway of connect, raise awareness, care, and then act. And I think that model works anywhere around the world. And our job is to try and help people understand their relationship with nature, to help them on that journey, and then to equip them with the tools potentially then to take action. And that action might be trying to help restore their local area, farm more sensitively, or whether it's trying to sort of influence the decisions of others outside of their control. But in the end, if people are aware, they're more likely to care, and if they care, they're more likely to act. So I haven't really given a huge amount of thought to this concept of systems thinking, but when someone said it was around connections and joining up the dots, it immediately made me think about the stopover sites of migratory birds. And for me, what we have to try and do is ensure that the network of sites which the birds need are well managed, protected and restored. And those sites, whether they're forests or wetlands or mudflats, will provide enormous benefit, not just to other species, but also to humans as well. And so if you take, for example, water birds, which obviously rely on wetlands. And those wetlands we know are essential for our own food and water security. They're really important in terms of risk reduction and helping us tackle climate change. And of course, 1 billion people depend on wetlands for their own survival. So if you focus on protecting and restoring a network of sites for migratory birds, you will get those spin-off benefits for wider biodiversity and of course for people and climate. And the great thing is that we have managed to partner with others who believe in that as well. So for example, the Asian Development Bank has been prepared to mobilize up to $5 billion over the next 15 years to try and protect and restore these sites across the East Asian Australasian Flyway, to try and protect a network of sites. They're doing that partly because, yes, they're interested in wildlife, but they absolutely know the value of the places those birds call home to people and for climate. And that partnership, I think, which we're trying to replicate in other parts of the world, with the Development Bank of Latin America, the Caribbean, the Americas, hopefully in Africa, hopefully in Central Asia, that is the big wild idea we have to try and create these robust, coherent networks of sites across each of the 4 great flyways of the world. And for me, if that's systems thinking, that's what we're trying to do.